there's a real need to change the way we reward people if we really want people to take the risk of working that differently from what's been paying their bills, what they've been rewarded for, what they've gotten A's for all their life.
So let's look at the model. Is the model somewhere else in the world for how we should do business, how we should collaborate?
I could come up with a better solution probably, but would it be a better solution for long? Is it the better solution? No, I believe that what we need is a driving vision. As somebody who works with change, I know that people don't like to let go of things that they love or that they're comfortable or that they know without having the next thing to grasp onto and say, this is a better way.
For somebody earlier on in their career, this is a great warning. Don't close yourself off to other experiences, to creativity, to things that will long-term make you really happy.
To be successful was to get your goal and grind that out. And then I get there and I go, I don't want to do this, for this is it.
Welcome to Success Story. I'm your host, Scott Clary. The Success Story podcast is brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network. HubSpot does a ton for entrepreneurs and business owners. That is why I'm so proud to partner with them for over 3 years now. If you need anything to build your business, help desk software, payment software, email marketing tools, CMS and blogging tools, SEO tools, deal management tracking, pipeline tracking. You don't need more tools to get more out of your business. You just need HubSpot. Their all-in-one customer platform is a dream come true for every member of your team. With best-in-class campaigns and workflows to generate more leads from marketing, category-leading pipeline management to help with sales, help them close more deals, powerful AI chatbots, and a knowledge base to help your service team scale, and it is built to deliver results, to drive revenue faster, and to help you grow your business. So dump the disconnected tools and the chaos that comes with them. Discover what HubSpot's all-in-one platform can do to streamline your business. Visit HubSpot.com to grow better today. Thanks again for joining me. Today I'm sitting down with Tina Berger. She is an advisor to Fortune 500 companies such as Chevron and BP. She has had an incredible amount of experience with corporatism over her career, advocates for a total reset of the corporate paradigm. She holds an MBA in global energy. She advises Fortune 500 through strategic digital transformations. Having engaged deeply with the challenges faced by corporate executives and staff for more than 20 years, she now advocates for a systemic reset, a collective reimagining of our economic paradigms such that they serve the global good and the needs of future generations. She writes and speaks on the power of receptivity and the power of a co-creative innovation and environment. She has a book that she's released coming around, Surprises and Surrender on the Path to Inspiration, and she discusses various leadership and crisis leadership experiences and lessons in that book. But she also speaks on corporate activism, like I mentioned, systemic reset. She speaks on various technologies. She used to work in finance. So an all-around, very, very interesting person. Very excited to dive into your origin story. So walk me through your career, wherever you'd like to start.
Okay, let me. So it's been a fun journey, and thanks so much for having me on. I think I was in the pre-talk. I was telling you I'm a little bit of an odd duck, right? So this is the context of me. I'm super curious about a wide variety of things, a ridiculous variety of things. So business and finance and investing, but also spirituality and awareness practices. I'm a long-term yoga and meditation practitioner and teacher. Science, which most of my business contacts aren't aware of. Science and technology and digital media and blockchain and travel and culture and poetry and art.
Everything.
It's ridiculous. So you can imagine, like, when the internet started being a thing, it was like my favorite thing in the world because I could dive in there and learn new things. But I got my start as a technical writer in the early 90s, doing project work for a service company and documenting processes and policies and work instructions within large energy corporations. So, and I live in Houston, so that's what there is here. That's the primary industry in the Houston area and the Houston market. So at the time, just for some context there, most of my clients, or at least many of my client corporations, did not have email or Windows-based environments. And so a lot of the business processes were still at the time managed using paper and manual processes and manual handoffs and things like that. And I got fascinated early on with the challenge of new technology, platforms and tools, and started developing my skills in that direction. And over time, that's where my career went. I followed that interest, and I built my career as a consultant, advising energy companies and leaders on how to get organizational support and engagement and adoption of new ways of working and new tools, new digital tools in particular. And that's been my niche for years and years. I think I did my first, like what they were calling digital oil field project around 2003, which was really almost kind of a pre-Facebook-ish, it was early. And so it's just been fascinating work for, 25 years. It's given me so many different perspectives and possibilities, and I've engaged with lots of different large corporations and how they're similar, the similar challenges, how they're different culturally, every kind of process within those organizations, from procurement, materials management, and to engineering processes and technical design processes, and every few months or years, my whole work life changes because I get on a different project and with different people and a different opportunity to learn something new. So I've led businesses and teams, and I've also worked, and I currently work as an individual contributor. And right now I'm working with a digital innovation team inside of one of the largest energy corporations in the world. And I'm having a great time. I'm working with some wonderful people. Yes.
So have you been sort of dabbling in individual consulting for the majority of your career? And you just, that's mostly what you've been working on, or has it been taken different forms?
It's taken different forms. I early on got interested in digital media, and there was a particular issue. There was a gap in hiring for a lot of the major oil and gas companies due to, basically the whole industry died off for a while in the 80s, and then it took them a long time to start hiring again. So there was this big competency gap, and so I teamed up with one of my friends and retooled a company to address that. So but I was still consulting. We were selling in e-learning and digital communication and a variety of other media projects, but also doing services and consulting delivery at the same time. So I've run companies, but I've discovered that I'm a big enough headache just to run myself. But actually, I really did enjoy that. At different times in my life, different things have worked. And so I've led teams, but currently, yes. And I've learned a lot from the teams that I've worked on and been with. But right now, for about the last 8 years, I've been kind of my own. I say that, but with one exception where one of my clients hired me full-time and permanent for about 1.5 years. And I thought, there was a lot that I enjoyed about that. But I'm not by nature wired to be corporate. So
you're an entrepreneur at heart, and you got pulled in.
I am.
So this.
I did.
So you're working. So that's why this is why you're on the bleeding edge of all this different tech, because this is what, like, you live it, and then you're bringing it in. Like you said, you're working in innovation units in all of these more traditional industries. Some of them are probably have advanced quite a bit, but so, like, for people listening, a company like Chevron or BP or a company like that size, they bring you in, walk through a project that you would have done with a company that would like what a digital transformation is for a company like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, there are in the upstream part of the energy business. So there's ways that there's typical there's certain terminology they use. Upstream is the part of the energy business that goes out and finds where the oil is and pulls it out of the ground, wherever that is. If it's in deep water, if it's on land, if it's in shale, wherever it is. So in the past, that work has been done in silos, for example. So I'm the person who looks at what we've done in this area and says, and I'm a geologist and I'm working with a geophysicist, and we look at this data and I say, this is where I think it is and this is how far down it is. And I've done that in a particular way, using a certain kind of tool, and then I throw it over the fence to somebody else who takes that and runs an economic analysis on it and says, here's how we can develop that out, and here's how we can deliver it over the years, yada, yada, and I think we should do it. Here's how much risk is associated with it. Well, all of those things were, one, done in tools that were not connected, and two, were done in processes that were not connected. And now we have new technologies that enable all of these people to look at the same data at the same time and troubleshoot and come up with really interesting ways to solve problems that have been problems for a long time, or reduce the uncertainties and risks associated with very expensive operations. And what we're finding is people are resistant to letting go of old tools, right? And then also don't know how to work together in a collaborative situation, tools or no tools. So they're trying to get people to adopt new tools and don't often realize that they're asking them to really sign almost a different contract than what they signed on to do. So my job is to come in, work with the team, understand what kind of engagements need to happen, and advise people on how to improve the delivery of the tools, improve the configuration of the tools, and help people learn how to get over the barriers of working together in new ways.
Now, you do this obviously through digital transformation, but some of the things that you speak on seem to stem from your understanding of the nuances of how companies work and how they don't work. So even within a company, after building out and sort of transforming some of these organizations for the majority of your career, what did you see was broken that you wanted to, or you thought should be fixed?
So there's different levels and different layers.
It's a broad question.
What doesn't work? Right. But one of the things that I think gets in the way, so digital tools, in order for them, the newest ones, to work well and and for us to work well with the capabilities and fully realize the value of those tools, it requires a collaborative dynamic. It requires that people get together and throw out ideas, but also really integrate and listen to the ideas of somebody who has a different perspective and listens well. But the way that we historically, our systems through school and all the way through in corporations and in the way we run business is competitive, and it advances people that are assertive, and it doesn't reward people who have learned how to be receptive and integrative. And so when you need to then shift, when you're looking at a tool and you say, we just need to learn how to do this tool, you have missed a lot of the big picture of what really needs to change in order for people to work better together, which is, no, there's a cultural barrier, not just at the corporate level, but in our kind of social and cultural paradigm in the U.S. is very individual, not communal. It's very competitive, not collaborative and co-creative or cooperative. We do that sort of, that's second layer down. If you can make it look cooperative, do that. But know that you won. When people said it, yeah. And so I think we miss the boat on that. So that's within the corporate context. There's a real need to change the way we reward people if we really want people to take the risk of working that differently from what's been paying their bills, what they've been rewarded for, what they've gotten A's for all their life. It's a bigger transformation than just a new tool. We're really good at letting go of old tools and just picking up new, more efficient tools that do the same thing. That we're good at, but not at completely changing the way that we interact and really learning how to listen deeply and how to really disrupt processes and be creative and innovative together. Because creativity and innovation are not processes; they're emergences. And we don't know how to make space for that. We want to know, if I give you 3 days to do innovation sessions, you can promise me that you're going to have some innovation at the end of that, But what causes innovation? What causes the flash that opens up a new possibility? And it's a little bit mysterious.
What's the model for what? So you advocate for systemic reset of a system that's entrenched. It's not easy, right? So let's look at the model. Is the model somewhere else in the world for how we should do business, how we should collaborate, that we should reverse engineer?
I so love the question, because it's a question. It's a delicious question, because as somebody who works with change, I know that people don't like to let go of things that they love or that they're comfortable or that they know, without having the next thing to grasp onto and say, this is a better way. And I also am aware that that we don't know the answer yet. I'm not pointing at a different system and saying we should adopt that system. And part of the challenge is that's what we want. It's that we want a certainty about the future that's not really possible. So we keep grasping for that and asking for that and say, I'm not letting go of this until you show me. And we're going to hold on to this with all of its destructive, damaging impacts until someone delivers us the actual better solution. Well, I could come up with a better solution probably, but would it be a better solution for long? Is it the better solution? No, I believe that what we need is a driving vision, which is not a goal. That's different from a goal. Even if you it's much easier to talk about these things if we look at the individual level, because everything that's true about the individual experience is also true about the collective. So if I say, how we ask people that are just coming out of high school what they want to do for their career, and then we make them choose, and then they go to school, and then they study that thing, and then they get in that career, and they go, oh, I didn't want to do this. This isn't what I want. Well, this happens to people that are not just in school. This happens with people's careers in general. Is like there's something we like about that, so we say that's the goal. And maybe it's a 5-year thing, and we start driving in that direction, and we get a lot of flags along the way that this isn't really quite it. There's something I like about that, but this was my goal, so I have to drive here. Instead of taking the hints along the way and going, what was it about that? I want to be in service this way. I have a gift to bring this way. This is me, but this part's not me so much. I've done that in my life many times because that's what I learned to do to be successful, was to get your goal and grind that out. And then I get there and I go, I don't want to do this, for this is it. And I've had so many conversations with senior leaders and executives inside of corporations, and they say, yeah, I'm here. This is what I spent my last 15 years trying to do. And is this all there is? This is it. This is not. And it's like, we're not good at inspired vision and inspired business. Inspiration comes from being still and going, what serves? And what I think serves right now is not a bad question to start with. What are we trying to serve? What are we in service to by saying every year these large global corporations need to be another 4 or 5% bigger on the bottom line?
Well, we're in service to, at this point, it's right. So you said you first of all, you nailed it. Like the the individual, you look at the individual situation and then you just extrapolate that, and that's the collective situation. So you see, the individual has the goals and the KPIs in the organization, and those goals and KPIs are aligned with the organization's goals and KPIs, which are usually to the shareholder, right? To the stakeholder. And that's and even if the company is private, the end goal is to, exit and achieve a higher valuation, or, have a positive ROI for the investors until they IPO. So it's always about the shareholder or the stakeholder. That's what drives everything right now.
That's possible. I mean, but for a privately held company, if you look at like a Patagonia, like where that's owned, I can't remember the guy's name, but that one dude, and he gets to say whatever he wants to say. He'll get big, pages, front pages on the New York Times or whatever, saying what he wants to say about Indigenous rights, or what he wants to say about gay and trans rights, or whatever he wants to say about what the government should or shouldn't be doing. And I've had people say, well, how come they can do it? And I'm like, no, that's not a publicly traded company. It's a privately held company. And publicly traded companies, in my view, I don't see anybody really owning the decisions made by those corporations, because a senior leader, a CEO says, I'm doing what the investment behavior of the market tells me it wants, which is to grow this bottom line, to grow the profit line. That's it. And the reason I know that is because that's the only thing that consistently drives investors to buy this stock. And it's fair enough. That's true. But I think people are unconscious, and the general public is unconscious about our investment behavior and how it drives those decisions. So we don't think of ourselves as owning those decisions just because we own stock. But when we sit down at the end of the year and either decide, or by ourselves or with our advisors, what are we going to invest in next year? The question is, well, what's going up? It's not what does that company do, and do I really feel aligned to it? And even
what's going to make
my experience, it's what's going to make me the most money, so I can get out of this misery faster. This misery,
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
It's totally like that. Yeah. It's completely like that. And so it's kind of a certain kind of crazy. And I feel like the work that I'm doing right now, the work that I'm getting to do right now, to come back to the question of what do we do different, because I didn't really answer that. I do believe we have to learn how to engage with each other in different ways. I do believe that, so if I say there's a bias towards the assertive in our culture, and that's basically this logical, rational, this need to plan things, this need to have everything be predictable, this need to build things and grow things, and this need to get your point into the room and to win at something. These are not terrible instincts. These are not terrible. This is not a terrible aspect of being a human, that we want to be known for what we do, that we want to be heard when we speak, that we want to plan things and be able to have some predictability in life, that we care about our individual needs and the needs of our particular families, that we're interested in those things, that we really want to move in the world and feel the earth under our feet and get things done. But they're out of balance with the whole other aspect of who we are as humans. So the other aspect is really listening deeply so that we can hear from other people that have different lived experiences, different gifts, different capabilities, and different perspectives on the same challenges and problems. And that's really like deeply listening, not like how we typically listen, where we're rehearsing what we're going to say next while the person is speaking. It's really taking that person in fully, learning how to allow space for spontaneity instead of having everything be planned out, and this push for this constant push for action and this constant push for efficiency takes all of the space out. It takes all of the space for breathing out of our systems. And so there's no space for spontaneity. There's no space for the emotional understanding that you need to get things to be different, taking into account the emotional impacts, and really holding what are our systems perpetuating in the world? Are we really fully aware, like emotionally, of the pain that that's causing? Because we are not just individual, we're also fully connected with everything on this planet. There's no way to separate us out completely, because we're living both of those things. Both, yes, we're having an individual experience, but we're also impacted by knowing, and you can see it in I can see it in my kids, and they're part of why I speak about the things that I do. But they know who makes their smart devices, and they know the situations those people are living in. I didn't grow up knowing that. It's painful for them to know that. So I'm not surprised by the fact that so many young people don't want to plug in and continue to do what I grew up doing. So we have to hold the emotional also at the same time as the intellectual. It's not just a matter of putting money in the bank. It's at what cost? And, what does it mean that we're doing that? And also this focus on structure over flow, and this lack of space for just being and being in a receptive, quiet mode is one of the ways, that we become receptive. So we have to figure out how to do these as individuals first, and how to acknowledge and make space for them. And when we do this in a group, when we learn how to do these things individually and we bring them to a group, different things happen. And much more creative, much more inspiring, much more integrated, much better solutions are possible when we can do that, because we can bring at that point the full value of the gifts in the room in a way we can't do it if we are doing what we call collaboration, which is 8 people sitting around a table advocating for the thing that they already knew they wanted to happen when they showed up.
I see why certain spiritual elements are now permeating how you optimize yourself in business. And this is, I can see that this is like the way that you speak about these two components. Like, yes, we have a whole bunch of issues in how we do business, but then there's a lot of core personal issues that we have to figure out as well that have just also been entrenched in the individual. I actually loved one thing that you said before we spoke was very interesting, because I want you to maybe talk about how to better yourself and to be a better citizen of citizen of the world, but also like in your organization. And I'm sure there's a lot of lessons and teachings that you have. But one thing you mentioned was how when people are upset with corporations, or people are upset with how things happen, they advocate, but then they aren't aware that they may be owners. They may be technically part of the problem. And I just want you to touch on that, because I thought that was a really interesting point you made that people may not be really enlightened to.
Well, I mean, so anytime I hear things like, or I hear terminology like corporations versus groups of people, because that's really what corporations are. They're groups of people that have a specific job that they're given, whether given that job consciously or not, they're given that job. This is your job, leader of a company, increase the bottom line forever. We never go, oh, hey, Citibank, you're big enough. Yeah. Yeah. You could stop right there. And so what we see over time is more and more weirdness in a company that's the size of a Citicorp, that is making up products that don't exist, or finding ways to bill for services that have no value in order to increase that bottom line. And so then people get angry. And same thing with energy corporations. I picked something different, but it doesn't matter what publicly traded corporation you're talking about. They're all once they get to a certain size, they're dealing with the same problem, which is, where are we going to get another 4%, 8% on the bottom line? And so, so people are out protesting, and they might be protesting any number of things. Wages, bad wages, or treatment of employees, reduction of benefits, damage to the environment, pipelines. And my reflection back to people when they do that is to say, are you sure you don't own that company? Are you sure that you don't own that? And they say, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, look in your mutual funds. You probably own, if you actually own any mutual funds that are stock-based, you probably own a lot of the companies whose practices you most deride, and that gives them a moment of pause. And I only tell them these stories because they're stories that I have lived out myself, and I constantly do challenge myself on how do I continue to work in corporations that have practices and have impacts that I am not in favor of, like that I want to stop. It's because, and you can only answer that for yourself, right? So I'm not saying everyone should not invest in the stock market. I'm not saying anything global like that. I'm saying you should know what you're invested in. You should be intentional. If you decide to invest in these companies anyway, be aware of it. Like, I fly a lot. I have a huge value for travel, but I don't fly without knowing what my impacts are. Like, don't get to tune out to that. And so there are other things that I try to do to accommodate, to compensate, to pay that out myself. And I don't invest in the stock market, and I haven't. I could be retired multiple times over if I did. But I stopped doing that almost 20 years ago because I worked in the stock market and I saw the kind of behaviors and the kind of impacts it was driving to. And I'm not going to there's no way for me to absolutely divest. I have my own personal risk profile that I'm managing, but I am managing it. I am actively holding the impacts and being sad about them sometimes, and that's okay.
And
being aware, that's it. Yeah, that's it. And so I don't hold myself as separate or different in any way except that way of, look, no, I'm really trying to be responsible and accountable for my impacts, and I'm trying to know them. And that's what I encourage people to do. Your risk profile is going to put you I have friends that are beyond me as far as, like, they've tried everything they can to check out the system, having a hard time staying up with their rent. And I get it, it's not how I'm not wired to work that way, to live that way. So it's like, well, where do you put yourself? And I also think I'm more powerful and more impactful where I am, working within those structures that I know so well, and I've been successful in, from within. And there was a time where I said, no, that's a cop-out. Like, you're not. But actually, I feel that I am now. I actually can see my impact in a way that I couldn't as a younger person.
Success Story is part of the HubSpot podcast network. In the network, there are other incredible podcasts like The Ops Authority, hosted by Natalie Gingrich. Every week on The Ops Authority, Natalie discovers actionable strategies to move your business forward and transformational stories of powerhouse business owners who value operation. You can't ignore back-end pieces that have to work together and flow smoothly in order to build a brand, grow a movement, or disrupt an industry. If the operation side of your business is a mess, putting out fires will always take priority, leaving no room for creative innovation, visibility, or networking with powerhouse peers, or even wannabe powerhouse peers. You got to get your house in order. And to do that, you have to listen to The Ops Authority wherever you get your podcast. You've worked with some of the largest organizations in the world. At what point did spirituality start to permeate your understanding of what it is to be a good professional, a good person, and walk me through that transformation and things that you teach about that now?
So I'm not brought in to teach spirituality.
But I'm in a traditional sense. But
yeah. But you know what I mean. Yeah. No, but it's a fair question. I just want to be, I have a service agreement that I'm responsible to, and I take it very seriously. People, I get called for particular business problems, and so I solve them. But I also know that these business problems, a lot of the challenges that I'm seeing reflected in businesses right now have to do with rigidity. They have to do with some of the same imbalances and issues. And so if you say, hey, we have got to get more collaborative, we have got to work together, we can't just have solutions that that make us more efficient. We have to have step change solutions that move us into a completely different space. Well, you can't do that unless people feel like they can experiment and fail. You can't do that unless you can really hear from everybody and create space that allows for integration, that allows for out of the boxness because like when you're working in one of those, like if you look at oil and gas companies, their work is highly risky. So they have processized everything down to try and get the human risk out of it, the environmental risk out of it. But they've overgeneralized that so that now it's like, do you think can we just get lunch for the team? Ooh, I don't know.
It's that bad.
Okay, not everything. It's you know what I'm saying? It's not like not everything is like that. There are areas where we have to create spaces where it's okay to experiment, and we have to be real clear about that. Well, and then in order to do that, in order to create containers that allow for the kind of exchange and the kind of inspiration. Inspiration is like, it's the inhale. It is so receptive. It's like when you're still and quiet, when you listen to somebody, you take them in fully, you go to sleep, you're in the shower, and you go, boom, there's that thing. You know, it finally got in there and it mixed around with some other things. And now I've got this idea that I never would have come up with on my own. You have to create safe spaces for people where they're affirmed. So you bring in things like unusual things like what's the word with the
like improv
approach?
Improv, yeah.
Improv. You bring in improv. Yes, because if your pattern is to say no to something because it's outside of your experience or you're perceiving it immediately to be risky because it's not familiar to you, then we have to get out of habits, like natural habits that continue to maintain the status quo. And so, yes, we can experiment with this and people can have really exciting, amazing experiences where they've reminded of their full human expression to solve a business problem. And then there's the possibility to apply that outside of the business as well. So that's part of how I hold my own vision. Yes, we're going to solve business problems and we're going to habituate some new behaviors and some new practices and some new approaches that make us more able to do that outside of a business context and maybe to solve the problem of business as a whole and some more cultural issues that you can see every day on Facebook and Twitter where no one's listening, no one's really hearing and taking in and everybody's parsing language and no one's really, not no one, but you know, the cultural norm right now is just to be repeating things at each other.
Yeah, well, I think even like social media algorithms like further propagate that problem because they create echo chambers. But I guess so. The best interpretation I want to define, and I think this is very important. When I define spirituality, what I really meant, I guess, was self-awareness, mental clarity, creativity, just being a better person. Not necessarily like you know, I need to do better in business, so I have to go find a religion or something. Like that's not what I meant. If you want to, fine, but I meant like just being like some more self-aware, in touch person. In my opinion, that's a component of spirituality and self-awareness that you have to have just because if you're just always in the zone, always working, and you don't have a concept of self, then you can't, you take it to whatever level you want. You can't be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. You can't be aware of how you communicate or interact with other people. So I think that being in tune with oneself is like an incredible superpower. And that's what I saw you dancing around. That's what I wanted to bring out, but you nailed it.
I really appreciate that. Thanks for the help. And also the knowing yourself is and being aware of yourself, but also being aware of your own flexibility. Those two things, because I can know like who I am and my limits at this stage of my life, and I also know I'm capable of a lot more that I haven't even begun to explore. So yes, I mean, I have some central gifts and strengths that consistently show up. The other thing that practice, like when I say practice, I mean daily meditation, breath, all these things that Tai Chi, all these things that I have experimented with over time because I'm naturally curious, have created a flexibility in me to be able to navigate projects, changes, people, and my own crap, with some sense of humor, because I know it's just being human, but also that I'm capable of being better.
One thing that we didn't touch on really yet, which I think would be interesting to get your opinion on, because I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, when I went and looked at your book on Amazon, this seemed to be the main theme. So success. And I think the first line in your book was you thought success would be more fun. And I find that interesting. So, we speak about the assertive people, the high performers, whatever. Okay. So say somebody has achieved incredible success, whatever that definition is, in their career or whatever. They have a certain role, they have a certain title, they make a certain amount of money. But you thought success would be more fun. Obviously, they're missing something. So walk me through your thoughts on that, because that's not the first time I've heard that from people that do have some level of success, but then they seem to be dissatisfied, just, oh, this is all it is. And it seems like such a privileged problem to have, which it is, but it's something that people do experience when they get to a certain point in their career. It's a real issue. So walk me through that. I'm sure you have some ideas.
Yeah, I think it's a real issue when the most privileged people in our culture and in our so we'll say our country can reach the pinnacle of what we consider to be successful, which is exactly what you said. What's your position? What's your income? And then go, this is not, I don't feel amazing. And I don't feel like I'm fully alive here. I feel like, so in order for me to become successful, and I track this in my book, I learned how to close off fully half of who I am. And I think this happens to a lot of people.
Sorry, what does that mean?
Become successful is like, so close off. So I was a highly sensitive kid. And what I learned growing up in our culture is emotions are not useful. Learn how to work around them, learn how to mute them, learn how to come from a place of logic and rationality instead, because you will not get anywhere if you show up with those emotions. And that was, and still is, kind of an advice that people get in the work world. Don't be emotional about this. Put the whole case together, bring it in a rational, logical way. Again, I'm not saying that's a terrible idea, but I'm saying if you lose contact with the emotional side of it and you can't pull that together after a while, because the only thing that gets reinforced is this other. So I learned how to do that. I learned how to pull my plans together. I learned how to get my voice into the room and to one-up people and to assert my points of view and to get my plans implemented. So that means I've stopped listening. So I've learned to stop listening. I've learned to dismiss people who are quiet. And a lot of times your quiet people in a room are people who are most thoroughly processing all of the information. They're slower. They despise a brainstorm because they're not going to be done interpreting, thinking, noodling, integrating by the time the whole thing's over, and they will have missed their opportunity to engage. So we punish, it's I don't want it to sound judgmental because I don't feel that way. I feel like it's just a miss. It's like our systems are such that they punish people in effect. They pay us for being a certain way. They advance us for being a certain way. So then everybody who is that way is promoted into corporations, into leadership positions, and other people are not, which means the whole thing repeats itself and it perpetuates itself. So we continue to advance the same kind of people when we really need a much more holistic approach to the problems that we currently have, some of which are within organizations and some of which are global.
But that still doesn't. Oh,
Well,
go ahead. Sorry. No,
so
no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say
no,
I
no, no,
want
go
to I
ahead.
want to bring this back to finding fulfillment, but keep going. That's all I was going to say.
Well, it's very difficult to find fulfillment when you're emotionally closed off and shut down. It's like, where's the joy? If you're not really holding the emotional impacts and the emotional and the love of the work that you're doing for itself, for the connection that it has with people, for the way that it allows you to create. When do people get excited? They get excited when there's a surprise, a spontaneous surprise that shows up. Well, if you've designed all the spontaneity out, if you weren't listening for new opportunities or ways to do things, if you're not having dynamics with people where you don't know what the outcome might be, you're missing some real rich experiences as a person. If you can't solve the problems that most matter, the problems that most matter are the ones that are hurting people, the ones that are helping people, the ones that are protecting the people who most need it, and not just the people, but the planet and the beings that live here, the things that inspire us. If what we're doing is driving towards uninspired outcomes that didn't come from anywhere except for somebody's intellect or somebody's old idea of what we should be in service to. What are we in service to? Like, if my kids don't want us to keep doing this and we keep plodding along the same path, and they're like, hey, how about we stop destroying the planet? Wouldn't that be cool? And we're like, yeah. Oh, and I hear many people of my generation going, they'll figure it out. They're smart. And I'm like, that doesn't feel fair to me. I'm not feeling that. I think, to me, that's a wake-up call. If the people that we say we're doing this for, on some level or another, they want their phones or whatever. If they're saying, no, really, we would rather you, we'd rather you save some resources for the future. We would rather you, not keep going down this path, then maybe we should listen. And I think we would find more meaning in our work if there was more meaning in our work.
Interesting. And for somebody earlier on in their career, this is a great warning to make sure that you want to have success, whatever you define success by. But red flag warning: don't close yourself off to other experiences, to creativity, to things that will long term make you really happy. But for people that are farther along in their career, like you said, you closed off half of yourself. How did you open that back up to find fulfillment in what you were doing?
Well, it's an ongoing process because everybody is a work in progress until we die. So I don't feel like, oh, I'm all open and it's all fixed. I feel like, I'm constantly trying to be a better person. And some of the issues that have plagued me for my whole life still crop up and plague me. But I think the idea that I think what we have to do is learn how to watch our internal and listen to our internal navigation, not just what is considered out there to be successful, not just what somebody says you'd be good at and you could make a lot of money at, but what moves you, and that, again, doesn't mean that's what you should do right now. It just means you should hold that as a knowing and see what shows up for you and follow things that feel correct. I think there's some ways to do that. Yes, you can have a goal. And if you keep checking on the goal, and that's a part of the process, it's just like the creative process is both receptive and active. So I'm not saying we should do one or the other, but receptive is, hey, what wants to be painted on the page right now? It's yellow. You pick up, then you have to respond with an action. You pick up the paintbrush, you grab the yellow, you paint something on the page, then you're back in receptive mode. What's next? And if we consider a little bit of that, instead of just driving and grinding. A little bit of that, you constantly have to come back to this receptive place and go, is this still right? Do I still want to be a doctor, or do I want to heal people? Or do I want to be a part of people's healing? And in what way do I want to be a part of people's healing? What did I learn this year that I didn't know last year about how I want to be a part of people's healing? Is it still a doctor? Do I want to, so am I liking school? Am I liking these classes, or am I hating them? And really it's a different direction. So those are the kinds of things that I encourage people to tune into. Again, it doesn't mean don't be a doctor. It just means understand and be aware of your choices every day. It doesn't mean don't invest in publicly traded companies. It just means hold and understand and be aware and be accountable for your choices there. So there's all kinds of, I say, you follow the instincts and intuition. Intuition is widely ignored in our culture. It's like, we know a lot internally about what wants to happen, what we want to be a part of, and we're constantly closing that down. And I think the more we learn to listen to that too, the more fulfilled we can be, because even if we can't do all of those things in the workplace, we can find ways to work with that energy and that knowing until we figure out how to bring it into the workplace. I'm a much better consultant than I was 20 or even 10 years ago because I listen better. That, even if nothing else came of the spiritual practices that I do and the meditative and awareness practices that I have experimented with, that right there is worth its weight.
Very, very interesting. Very smart. Very smart. I wanted to ask you some lessons from your career, but was there anything else that we went into system reset, we went into digital transformation, we went into being aware of your role in the world and companies. We went into, professional development, personal development, touched on spirituality, self-awareness. That was a lot of topics. That was very good. Is there stuff anything else that you bring up in the book that would be a good knowledge nugget or learning for people that are listening, or did we cover most of it off already?
There's one piece that I want to come back to, because everybody's asking, well, what's the next system? So you're saying we should be done with this one that's all profit motivated. And what I would like to see is exactly the same thing that we've been talking about as individuals, is that we come up with a system that works for the challenges that we have now, and we acknowledge that we are in a dynamic world. And that means we constantly have to revisit what we do. So we don't have to pick a system that works forever. We have to pick a system that solves at least some of the problems that we have right now, that are showing themselves right now. And we have to get the right people in the room that have the different perspectives, the right perspectives, and figure out how to integrate those perspectives and co-create the new solution together. You can't wait for somebody else to bring that to you, because it won't have you in it. And if it doesn't have you in it, you're not going to like it, because it won't reflect your gifts. So it has to have enough of the right, enough of the perspectives and enough of the gifts that people can find themselves in it and go, yeah, that's inspired. Yeah, that's what I want to be a part of. Otherwise, it's just somebody else's idea of the next best thing, and it might be a little better, but it's not going to be the solution. So I think we modify things. I think we got to get out of this is the anchor thing. It's
like there's so many. I think that obviously I love the fact that you have everybody building this, but I think it's first step one is step one is to get companies to understand that there's other ways to do things, which we're seeing shifts slowly, of course. Over the past 2 years, I think shifts have sort of sped up a little bit. And expedited a little bit, but then after that, then you have organizations that hopefully adopt more of a bottom-up approach in just their policy making, in the way they interact with the world, their customers, their stakeholders, and then it's just going down this path, continuously going down this path, and then I think the evolution of that would be when you have a more bottom-up, psychologically safe work environment. You also touched on this. Then that's when the ideas that are coming from people that are at every level of the organization and with all these different experiences, and very all at different points in their life from different backgrounds. That's when you have an organization whose policies towards everything start to shift. But it definitely takes, like, you have to enable that psychological safety so people feel safe, putting their opinion in,
Yeah, and real hard to do when you've got a bunch of people that you've promoted because they're not like that. So this is a bit of the challenge, and these people are not just in corporations; they're also in government. Leading our country are people who have been trained to argue to the death. That they're attorneys. And that's just the job. That's not who they are as people. Although I'm sure, over time, we all get anchored to certain things if we're not careful. So I think we need to move to a much more dynamic, system and way of working together, which is uncomfortable to people. So that's the collective view that I have on. We've got to get braver. We can't keep holding on to things because we're not brave enough to live with the uncertainty of what's next.
I love that. Very well said. Okay, I'm going to ask you some career questions to pull out some inspiration for people. You've had a very interesting career. Obviously, a lot of different aspects to your career. What was the biggest challenge of your career, and how did you solve it?
So I'm not a fast learner in a lot of ways, and so I have had to. I'd say the things that have been the thing that's been the hardest for me is letting go of the fact that in certain situations I just know better because I'm an expert in this thing. Letting go of expertise well enough to allow other perspectives to inform me has been one of my biggest challenges, and I've learned that lesson the hard way enough times that I'm much, much better at it now. It forced me to surrender at a point. And I was doing a lot of this, I would call them old school leadership things. Anytime you hear someone talk about buy-in, that's an old school leadership term. It means I know what we're going to do. I know it's correct. And now I just need you to buy in and recognize how genius I am and take this forward with me. Instead of I'm looking for your feedback, I'm looking to make this better. Here's the problem I'm trying to solve. What do you think about it?
And that's a great segue to the next question. What is the biggest misconception about leadership that you see?
I think the biggest misconception about leadership is that people who get in leadership roles inside of corporations, I can't speak from my experience outside of them, but that they're all money driven. What I have seen in my life is that people mostly, with very few exceptions, and I've had a lot of experience with people, and I have seen exceptions. There are some psychopaths out there, but mostly people have really good. It's true though. I mean, I would have argued with you about that 10 years ago, but now I'm like, oh wow, yeah. But most people are really well intentioned, and they move into leadership because they care about people and they care about doing things right, and they want to have a legacy, a good impact on the world. And what happens is over time, they have fewer and fewer options, in order. One example is, I tell this story in the book, is that there was a leader who was in charge of a large business unit in one of the biggest energy corporations that I've consulted to, and he was probably the most engaging, most emotionally aware and caring leader that I've ever worked with. And he brought his team together, and they did a collective values and visioning workshops, and they were a cohesive team, and they had decided together that they were not going to do a process called flaring when they produced the asset, which means they were going to be they were going to do a greener process, and they weren't going to burn hydrocarbons off into the air. And they were responsible for a significant delivery during this particular quarter. And he was pushed to reverse that decision, and he had to, otherwise he was going to not hit his number. And that number was really important to the company, the corporation. It was important to their quarterly earnings. And so he had to reverse it, and his team didn't feel like he went to bat for them, didn't feel like it thought, they were angry, and and anyways, he probably could have handled the resolution of that better. But the point was, he didn't want to make that decision. An asset like that is going to produce what it's going to produce over its lifetime. Whether you delay it for, 4 weeks or not, it's not going to make it more or less ultimately. So he felt like his hand was forced, and this happens all the time, where people end up having to lay off huge numbers of people that they know they're going to have to hire back in a year, or they're going to have to find somebody who's not as good as the people that they're having to let go. They're having to cut benefits to people. They're having to reverse on decisions that they made a long time ago in order just to make this one number go up as fast as it needs to go up. And these are damaging. These are damaging decisions that no one really wants to be forced to make. And the question is, why do we keep forcing people to make decisions that they know are bad?
It shifts the perspective quite a bit, because the obvious scapegoat is the individual that makes the decision, right? Regardless, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I can push back. I can say too that I don't think that a lot of times we don't have enough bravery in that role, in CEO roles, to say, look, I want to communicate directly to stakeholders, to the shareholders about this. I want to say, look, we're going to take a loss, or we're going to reduce earnings by this much for this year and this quarter because we're making the decision to hold on to our people. And there's been a little bit of that. Some companies do that a little bit better. Or we're going to cut dividends. Dividends is a profit share. Why would you lay people off before you cut dividends? That makes no sense to me. Unless you really want to let people go and they're not really, you're trying to cover some other different objective. But in general, it's not an easy role to lead a P&L in a large corporate. It's a very impersonal role. And so what happens is the people who are personally connected often leave. And so what you end up with at the top of those companies is people that can sleep like a baby and still make those decisions, which is not what you want, because they're leading. They wield massive influence on our government and all of our other systems.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would that be?
Yeah, I would tell myself that this is going to be a fun ride. I would tell myself that it gets better. I wouldn't say I did not have a rough start in my family. I was very supported, but I felt like a real weird kid because I was one. And now I'm just a real weird adult, and I'm okay with it. But I enjoy the engagements that I have. I enjoy the work that I do. I enjoy the people that I do it with, and I enjoy becoming more alive every year. And that's the magic of it.
I like that. I like that answer a lot. No, it's just funny because when you are young, you just tend to try and rush everything and to try and just move faster and quicker and do more, right? But after a while, you realize that's not the answer.
Yeah, I was always a smart kid, and that's what I ended up leaning into is okay, this is who you are. Well, I mean, okay, but that, that's not all.
Okay. who is one person that had an incredible impact on your life, and what did you learn from them?
Ooh, so many. Yeah, it's a hard one. Um, well, I can say one of the most fortunate things in my life is that I have had a large extended family around me, like the whole time that I was growing up. And even when I was at my most awkward, which was probably up until last year, but like if I, but, but if we stay with like my adolescent years, I had some real internally difficult times reconciling who I was and where I fit into the world. But I always had people around me, cousins, aunts, uncles, my parents too, who just thought I was the best. And like that has like lifted me through my entire life. So I've had great professional mentors. I've had but the idea that there's only so far I can fall because I have people in my ear and in my life all the time that don't care if I fall or not, you know? And I've had plenty of personal and work related failures and they've never wavered. So that is a privilege that is never lost on me because I know that I don't want to sound too sentimental, but it doesn't feel like a sentimental thing. It feels like a knowledge that there is always there's a lift there. You know what I mean? I can try things because I can't fail bad enough that they're going to be gone.
Can you recommend a book or a podcast besides your own? We'll get that in the show notes, but a book or a podcast that somebody should go check out.
I'm a big fan of a woman named Joanna Macy who wrote a book called Active Hope. And the book that she wrote before that, let me see if I can recall the name of it. Let's stick with Active Hope. And then Joanna Macy, who is she's an amazing person who is an environmental activist, but also a Buddhist teacher. And she is all about actually feeling what's happening in the world and finding the ways to activate that, to use the feelings of grief and pain and love, to find your ways into the right ways to support, given who you are and what you have to bring to it.
I just Googled her. She has a ton. She has a wild love for the world, coming back to life, pass it on, world as a lover, widening circle. She has something like 10, 15 different books. Very impressive. I don't know her. I have to check out her stuff.
Yes, do definitely. The work that reconnects. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. And then most important question would be, what does success mean to you?
So success for me means that the work that I'm doing and the life that I'm living is in service to making the world a better place for future generations. And I don't just mean like the world is like the small W world of the people around me. I mean, I want to bring what I have I want to know that I have wrung out who I am in service of doing something that will be good in the world, and not just for myself, but for my kids and for people that I don't know on the other side of the planet.
I love that. And then where do people reach out? Email, phone, social, website, whatever you want to draw.
You can find information about me on my website, which is www.tinaberger.com, and all my links are there to my social, and my book links are there as well.